So in this third and final section of unlocking IBM SPSS statistics, we turn our attention towards the data analysis and deployment part of the analytical process. And we're also going to briefly look at automating our analysis. So having got to the stage whereby we've successfully read in our data from Excel, we formatted it correctly using the copy data properties and using a previous file so that we can attach labels and other data, metadata to that file appropriately. We've also gone through some procedures with regard to manipulating and transforming the data. So we've been able to create, for example, age from date of birth. We've run the visual bander to create age band, beginning salary band and current salary band. We're in a position whereby we can actually do some analysis. And before we do so, if we draw our attention to some of the other fields and introduce those, we've got some continuous or interval level fields here, such as education level in years. We've got job time, which records the months since hire and previous experience in months. We've also got a categorical or group field here in the form of job cat, which actually records the employment category. And if we wanted to summarize some of these fields, we could do so by going to the Analyze menu, clicking on Descriptive Statistics, and if I turn my attention towards categorical fields like job cat, if I run frequencies command on that, we'll see that we can just select that field, which is employment category. Across. Note that we've got the list of fields down here, that the dialog boxes are resizable, and we can just drag and drop them, and we can sort them in order of the alphabetical order and order of the file. We can also see the variable information itself, so we can see what the levels are within the variable, what the labels are, and any custom attributes associated with that. And within the frequencies table here, I can even ask for a pie chart, for example. So if I hit continue and click OK, that's just going to punch out a table to me with a little pie chart, and we can see the frequency of the different job categories, where 76% of the people within this file are in the clerical job category, 5.7% are in custodial, and 17.8% are managers. And that adds up to, that's from 474 records, of which one record has missing data. We don't know what that person's job category is. Alternatively, if I go back to the data itself from the output window here, I can look at some of these continuous fields that we mentioned earlier and go to Analyze Descriptive Statistics again, but this time call up Descriptives. And if I focus on things like education level and beginning, let's go for it, month since hire and previous experience, click OK, we can get some little summary statistics out here telling us what the minimum and maximum is for education level from 8 to 21 years with a mean of 13 years. Same thing for months since hire, on average 81 months, and previous experience about 100 months of previous experience that the employees have on average, running from 2 minimum to 476 maximum. Okay, you'll notice that when I'm creating these tables, and I'm going to frequencies, I'll just do another frequency table here, and this time I'll ask for gender and minority classification, and we'll put in age as well this time. Just our new field, click OK. You notice that they come out and they're fairly Spartan in their approach. You know, they're not, the aesthetics behind them aren't are fairly basic, but we can change that if I click on, for example, one of these tables. In fact, if I double click it and then right click, I can call up what's called the table looks menu. Click up the table looks, and that gives me a range of different formats for the tables, which I can skip down through them. So these are looks or formats which appear or which ship with the software itself. They're available for anybody. You can create your own table looks. In fact, if I browse to a folder on my hard disk, I've got the Smart Vision table looks, which you'll be able to get off our website. And this is how we can call them up and apply them. So if I just find the Smart Vision folder, here's a number of different table looks. So for example, if I went for teal gray stripe here, it gives me an idea of what that would look like. If I choose Mondrian, it gives me an idea of what that would look like. If I choose something like Moody Blues here, that turns into a nice little blue table look. And if I click OK at that point, you can see that's what that table will look like. And in fact, if I want to set that up permanently as my table look, I can go to the Edit Options menu here and go to Pivot Tables tab, set table look directory, or go to browse, find that table look. So again, go back to the Smart Vision folder on my hard disk, select that table look, click open, click apply, click OK. It means that if I rerun these procedures, I'll switch off the charts so we don't need them. You'll see that they're all in that new applied default table look. In the next section, let's have a look at examining the relationship between fields. So we're going a little bit deeper into the analysis here, and we want to examine and ask questions about how, for example, age varies by job category, or how salary band varies by gender and by minority classification. And we'll be able to look at some of the procedures we have available to address those sorts of questions. So if we wish to examine the relationships between variables, there are a number of routines available for us to do that. And to a degree, it will depend on the level of the variable, i.e. whether or not it's a interval or a categorical field. But let's say we're looking at the relationship between categorical fields. If we return to the data, we can click on this Go to Data button, which takes us back to the data set. If I go to Analyze up here, again, a very common procedure which is used precisely for this purpose is the crosstabs procedure. Again, under the Descriptive Statistics menu, click on crosstabs. Crosstabs allows me to look at the relationship between pairs of categorical or grouping fields. So in this case, if I looked at the relationship between, let's say, job category, which I'll put in the columns, and age, which I'll put in the rows, it doesn't really matter what order they go in. If I click OK at that stage, it'll simply produce a very simple little crosstab for me, simply telling me how many cases fall into each permutation of these groups. So for example, we can see that there are no cases in the under 27 age group for custodial. In fact, there are no cases under 31 in the custodial age group. So there are some differences there. If we wanted to see the data in terms of percentages, or in terms of the proportions of custodial workers in various age groups, or the proportions of various age groups across employment category, I can use a dialog recall button here, which call up that dialog box again, and I can go to the cells button here and ask it to switch on row and column percentages, click continue, and I create a much larger crosstab because I'm putting in now 3 values into each of the cells, showing the count, the percentage within age group, and the percentage within employment category. And we can see, for example, straight away that 77% of those within the 46 plus age group are clerical workers. And in fact, 70% of those within the custodial employment category, as evidenced by percentage within employment category, are in fact happen to be 46 years plus. And in terms of management, well, management seem to be clustering. 40% of managers are either 28 to 31 and 40% are 32 to 45. So there's some very strong differences there between the age groups and where they, what employment category they belong to within this organization. If we wanted to include continuous fields in here and go a little bit deeper and say, well, let's see how that varies in terms of beginning salary, and we or in terms of years of education. Of course, beginning salary we already have as a crosstab, we can already have as a categorical field here, and we have it as a continuous field, so we've really got the best of both worlds. But if I use the tables procedure, then I'll be able to create quite complex tabular output where I can mix together grouping or categorical fields and interval or continuous fields. And in fact, it makes it pretty easy for me, because if I click on custom tables here, I can drag the variables across and it shows me the table that's being built up. So for example, if I wanted to look at the relationship between minority classification, let's say I put that down the side here, and gender, put under that, I can break that down by age group or by beginning salary. I can put that across the top here. I can see the counts of that. I can also ask for things like educational level, and I can either add that in at the bottom, or I can add it as a column at the end, showing the mean educational level. So I can build up quite complicated tabular output here. And in fact, if I go into some of the summary statistics, I can go into categories and totals and look at the individual fields. I can add subcategories if I wish, or add totals. So I'll add a total here, and I'll add a total for that category as well, which is males and females. And with regard to what's actually being shown here, which is counts, I can go into summary statistics and say, well, actually, I'm not that interested in a count. I'm probably more interested in the row percentages. And if I don't like the label for that, I can change it and edit it. So I've got a lot of control here over what's actually going to occur and what's going to appear within this this crosstab deletion. If I don't like the fact that education is going to be shown as average or a mean, I can go into summary statistics and add in another field if I want, like add in minimum, maximum, and median values, other measures. And now I'm getting a much larger table that's coming out the back of that. And in fact, I can add layers to it and so forth and so forth. So I can create quite a complex, so the table that comes out the back here, where we can see the percentage of the row percent here for different salary groups in terms of whether or not people are minority classifications or not. So of those who are minority classification, only 7% are in the highest salary bracket compared to those who aren't in the minority classification, where 30% are. And the same sense of females, 6.9% of them are in the highest salary bracket compared to 39%, almost 40% of males. And here we have the mean values for education, how they vary for these different age groups, the median values and how they vary for these different age groups, and the minimum maximum values as well. So we've created quite a complex table here. There are other ways, of course, in which we can show the relationships between these fields, and one of them is to look at the graphical side of data analysis, and that's what we'll do in the next section. So as with the tabular analysis, there are lots of different graphical procedures that we can run within IBM SPSS Statistics. If I go to the graphs menu at the top here, you've already seen me using Chart Builder to describe the relationships or the differences between some of the new fields that we created using the visual bander. If I call up Chart Builder again, this time we can use it to examine the relationship between, again, a mix of continuous or interval level variables and categorical variables. So for example, if I wanted to look at, say, a box plot, where I can see the relationship between, let's say, gender and salary, we can do that. So I can go and say, okay, well, let's look at the current salary, put that in there. We can break that down by whether or not somebody is male or female. In fact, we can go further than that and color it by whether or not there's a difference in the minority classification. Click OK, and you can see it's a drag and drop interface again. It's drawing a picture or previewing the chart for me. And it would be the same for any chart that I choose here, but if I click OK at that point, that produces a chart which is again editable once we've created that, and we can send that out in a variety of different formats. Alternatively, there is in fact another graphical procedure we can use, something called the Graphboard Template Chooser. And if I select that as an option, here I can look at, again, the relationship between a mix of continuous and categorical fields. And what's interesting here is that as I click on them, different fields, it starts to recommend different charts or charts which may be appropriate. So if I've got a number or continuous field here, such as current salary, and a category field, such as minority classification, you can see the box plot's one of them that comes up. If I simply click on, let's say, current salary, beginning salary, and age of employee, then one of the plots I can call up is a bubble plot. I can select that, and I can even go into that in more detail and say, actually, I'll have that shaped by and colored by age of employee, as well as have the size of the bubbles of the points themselves in the scatter plot, age of employee. If you click OK at that stage, that produces quite a rich piece of output here in the form of a bubble plot, and we can go in and edit that. The size of the bubbles relates to the age of the employee, so the larger the bubbles, the older the employees. We can see there's quite a lot of older employees down near the lower end of current salary and beginning salary, and we will remember and recall from our analysis earlier on that in fact a lot of the custodial workers tend to be in the older age groups. If I double click on that, I can actually go in and I can edit these. So I can go into edit mode and call up different editing options. So if I click on these buttons, for example, I can say actually I'll have that solid, And if I change the colors, I can ask for different colors. In fact, it's going to color it by different sizes. And with regard to the sizes, I can even play around with what's called the transparency levels here. So there's a lot I can do within this. If I go to the scales and click on the scales here at the side, I can switch on grid lines. Do that for major and minor ticks. The same for major and minor ticks for the X or horizontal axis. And if I don't like the colors of the grid lines, I can change them and make them a little bit grayer, so they're not strong. And generally get to the point whereby I'm a lot happier with the look of the chart. Once I've got to that stage, I can click the X button up here to close it, and of course it's back in our output window. We've created a very nice chart. Now, something which I alluded to at the start of this section was automation, and the sharp-eyed among you will have realized that when I've been calling up these procedures, that it keeps a record of them in this dialog recall procedure, the dialog recall button here. And also, if I choose a procedure such as frequencies, you can see here's the previous frequencies procedure I ran, and we have an OK button. If I press OK, it'll run that again. But I also have next to that, and next to most of the dialog boxes within IBM SPSS Statistics, is a paste button. And the paste button doesn't run the routine, but rather pastes what's called the syntax behind it. So this is the command that SPSS is running in the background. And in fact, I can go back through these various procedures, such as custom tables here, and hit paste. And that adds that syntax to the syntax window. I can go to the crosstabs, hit paste. In fact, I can do pretty much all of the previous work that I've done in all three parts, including formatting, reading, manipulating data, and I can record all of it by hitting paste. And having it produce for me a syntax job which shows all of these procedures. In fact, just to prove that to you, if I want to run that syntax job, I can hit run, and it runs that selection for me, and it goes and produces all of this output again. If I want to actually record everything, I simply have to hit paste. There may be times when you need to edit that syntax or change it, but obviously, if we're doing regular reports, this is a very, very powerful aspect of using the software. And in fact, in the last section now, we're going to show you how we can run an entire syntax job to create a whole bunch of output, and then we'll send the results of that out into another format for somebody else to consume. So in this final example, we start with a completely blank IBM SPSS Statistics data window. We haven't read any data in, but to show the power of the syntax that we can create by hitting the paste button, everything I've done pretty much so far I've recorded in syntax simply by hitting paste over and over again. If I go to File and call up that syntax job that I created, and just go to Recent Use File, Employee Data, Automatic Employee Reports, there's the entire thing from reading the raw Excel file to formatting the data to calculating our age variables, to running some custom tables, some crosstabs, and a bunch of charts. If I go run all at this stage, we'll see it grab the data, format it, and start punching out results to us in the output window. And here we have our output window showing us, in fact, a bunch of different table looks applied to the output here. Some charts, a little bubble plot, and some other charts. And if I want to then distribute that among some of my colleagues, if I go to File from within the output window and go to the export options here, you can see that there's a bunch of different exports. I can export it as PDF, as PowerPoint, as Excel itself. So if I choose something like, let's go for something like Word here, I'm going to send it out to a folder called C, Employee Data, Employee Report.doc. I've got some control over here whether or not I shrink the width of the tables to fit within the page margins, etc. And if I click OK at that stage, It then exports that output and I can open it. And if we go and open it, we can see what the results are. So there's our final report showing the output that we've created within IBM SPSS Statistics exported out to Microsoft Word, showing salary by age group broken down using one table look, salary by gender minority using another table look, and employment category by minority using yet another table look, some charts as well. And all of that's been generated via the syntax that we have used to record our previous analysis.